Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 9 of Sex Work with the Butterfly Princess and Amy Taylor. Excuse me. In episode 9, we're going to talk about health and safety issues that sex workers face in their line of work. Now, we've already talked about health risks in episode 3. We've talked about STIs, substance misuse, but I wanted to focus more on this episode of the more of safety, because obviously sex workers are more at risk of becoming unsafe in their line of work, depending on where a client wants to have sex with them, or if they don't want to use protection, and there could be victims of violence by the client, or in some cases, if they go to report, to the police that they've been mistreated or raped in some way, then they can be that they can be a victim of violence at the hands of the law enforcement, because again they can just treat them as a sex object and nothing more. So I'm going to pass on to Amy now to discuss some of the safety issues that are faced by sex workers in the sex industry. Hi Amy, thank you for joining me for episode 9. So safety, what is that all about in the sex work industry?
Hi, it's so good to see you again. And you correctly talked about when people are viewed as a sort of throwaway person, they don't receive the same respect by either their customers or stakeholders or society at large, and they are subject to less safe working conditions. So yes, there can be coercion by a client. You don't want to have sex and tries to force you, and if you're in an unsafe location, like street-based sex workers, there's a lot of violence and exploitation on the street. They can be working in cars where there's not a lot of security. They can be in motels where anybody can get to them. Some people in some countries or cities have decided instead to establish safe spaces like brothels in Nevada, or strip clubs, or there's OnlyFans studios where women can go record and they're not in their home. And those zones where various types of sex workers can operate. Oh, dungeons for the BDSM folks. They can operate with reduced risk, security, cameras, bodyguards, whatever. And they can have access to emergency services if things go wrong. So that can all be much safer. And in many forms of sex work, those things exist.
So what when we talked about violence, so obviously like we said, what if a sex worker has been violated by a client, they may have been hit or punched or forced into doing a sexual act, and they want to report it to law enforcement, but the law enforcement officer doesn't take them seriously. So what can be done to make the sex worker feel more confident in reporting, an act of violence to law enforcement?
Well, in some countries, they have more rights. There are a lot of police abuses in America. When I had a stalker, it was a pimp who wanted me to sell sex for him, and he was going to profit off me, and I don't do that, and I won't. I told him to go fuck himself. And he did try to hurt me, outed me to the world, and then later tried to kill me. And I did go to law enforcement, knowing that they might not care about me. They might ignore me. I went with my lawyers, and I was just a pushy bitch, and I wanted to stay alive. And luckily, law enforcement decided to help me. I owe my life to the Phoenix police. I would not be here without them in Arizona, in the USA. And I don't think they thought I was a great person, but they thought that I should not be murdered, which was great. When I sued this pimp for outing me to the world, because it cost me a lot in life. I lost my job, I lost my boyfriend, I miscarried my unborn child, my family disowned me for years. I sued him and I won, but three judges tried to throw the case out. The fourth finally took it because three judges thought I was just a garbage person who didn't deserve to be able to sue somebody who was ruining my life. But the fourth one allowed the case and I won. I never collected the judgment because it was never about money, but I was just so delusionally brave that I don't care how much I suffer. I'm not going to give in to a bully. And I think that's the first step, I think. But for those, it can cost people their access to their children, like in custody or it can be so difficult to go to law enforcement in a criminalized environment where they just won't. And even where it's stigmatized, like OnlyFans models won't come forward and report stalkers, even though their work is 100% legal. So what societies can do is the thing we've been shouting for the rooftops. They can decriminalize, because then we can tell you where the bad actors are. We can tell you where the traffickers are because we know who they are.
And obviously, with you talking, like, you were threatened by a pimp and like you weren't taken very seriously. I was just wondering, because I know we talked very briefly about in another episode that there was a lady who you sort of campaigned for, who was a sex worker. Now, she was unfortunately murdered by a pimp or a client. I can't remember what you said the person was, and he's been put in prison now for. Could you tell me a bit about her story?
Yeah, she's in Las Vegas. Was in Las Vegas, and he was a client, not a pimp, but Miss Garcia. What is her first name? Yeah, her last name was Garcia, and the client who's in prison now is named Jason Kendall. And we'll see how the case goes. We've got to pack the court thing coming up. I don't know that I can be there in Vegas. I wish I could, but a lot of people will be. And he snapped. It was a price dispute. She wanted more money than he wanted to pay. And the worst part is what I've seen in the chatter on the internet is that some people think it was okay for him to kill her because she wanted more money and, fuck her for that. And that's insane and evil. Obviously, it's a business dispute. If he didn't have the money or didn't want to pay, they should have ended the deal, figured out whatever she should get paid for showing up, but the deal falling through. I don't know how it went down. I wasn't there. Apparently he was probably on drugs, they're saying, but again, I'm not sure of that. He was a military veteran, kind of a good looking guy. If you look up the case of Jason Kendall, you can see his mugshot. I don't know. He snapped at a very fancy hotel, hiring a very fancy woman. I have no idea why it went that way. And we'll find out more details as the case gets, but I applaud law enforcement in Las Vegas for at least arresting the man, because there are other cases where men go free killing us and they just don't care. So at least Nevada has decided that whatever, even if she was a sex worker, she didn't deserve to die. She was a mother, she was a friend, she was young, had her whole life ahead of her. And I don't care what kind of price dispute happened, no one deserves to get killed for it.
Just to finish off this episode, because there are some countries out there who advocate for the safety of sex workers in their work, and we've got two examples here. And one of the countries is New Zealand. They have a decriminalisation model, and this was of the work of sex workers, and this came in 2003, so it's been active over 20 years now, and it's called the Prosecution Reform Act, and it's been applauded for improving the health, and safety of sex workers who operate in New Zealand.
Yes, it's great. I don't love the name Prostitution Reform Act. It's a weird, but who cares? Yes. Famously, a sex worker not too long ago in New Zealand, her client wouldn't pay her and she was able to sue him just a normal business dispute like any other industry, which is pretty cool. You know, nobody can do that in a criminalized environment. You can just be ripped off. And what are you going to do? What happens in a criminalized environment when you get ripped off is you handle it with street justice, which increases violence and crime. And no one wants that. It's not better, but that's all people have when they have no legal way to ensure that they don't get harmed and they get paid. They go to blackmail or pimps or violence, which makes society worse. Duh. So New Zealand is doing it better. They are. And we've got more years of data than ever, and we'll see how it continues out. But this is a great model of how it can be done better by a very smart country. And I wish my big, messy country would consider something like this.
Another country that's sort of helping, you know, sex workers with their health and safety is that of Switzerland. Now they have a regulating model, and they're able to regulate the work of sex workers, allowing sex workers to operate in legal frameworks in access to health and safe self services, because that's really important. Because we've talked about, you know, in some countries like yourself, you've been, you know, if you tell someone a health, you know, health insurer in America or whatever, or you've had experience of this yourself, where the minute you tell them you're a sex worker, they don't insure you, or like, you know, you've been tried, you know, seeing nurses for about, you know, contraception, and they've sort of judged you for having multiple sexual partners.
As if others don't also, right? Most certainly the very high-end sex workers, we have very little sex. We're very boring, actually. Most of what we do is trip around the globe with some rich old man who just wants to be around beautiful people. It's not very sexual at all. But that said, yes, Switzerland is doing it in a regulated, they have like brothels. So do some of the other European countries, Germany. Now, some people claim that this increases trafficking. Woo woo, trafficking. It's immigrants coming there to work in the brothels because they can make good money. And it's not always abusive. Is it the world's best job? Would they rather be a surgeon? Yeah, probably, but that's not available to them. And some of the brothels might have shady bosses who try to have sex with some of the workers. And, you know, there's all the labor abuses that exist in any industry. I've been a cargo pilot. You know how much I got harassed but sexually demanded sex by coworkers or dispatch or people that work there? It happened all the time when I was a pilot. Nobody's outlawing aviation. So yeah, I've been sexually harassed in biotech. Nobody's outlawing that world. I mean, being a good looking woman, especially when you're young, you're going to get sexually harassed in any job you do. So the degree to which it happens in brothels, I'm sure it exists. I've heard of it from colleagues and friends, but this, at least there's health checks. They're controlling the spread of disease. It is certainly a better environment than criminalization. Every choice a country makes is better than a criminalized environment.
Also, the last one, now we've already talked a lot about the Nordic model, so I don't want to sort of repeat ourselves again, but another country of America that is the Americas that sort of protecting the rights of sex workers is Canada. They've adopted the Nordic model, and it sort of which criminalizes the purchase of sex, but so it's illegal to purchase sex, but not to sell it. But of course, this has had some critics as well.
Yeah. So like you said, we've talked about it. The idea is that you're going to reduce demand. It doesn't work. And the sex workers don't like it. And many of them therefore try to come to America to work because they're like, look, if half the transaction is going to be criminalized, to heck with it. Might as well come across the border to where the whole thing is and at least, you know, get paid. So it's not working at all. And they will probably back off. This will probably be a failure that they'll circle back and end in some years because it's an idiotic policy. It doesn't work.
Well, thank you, Amy, for, that another insightful episode. And join us again soon for the last few episodes in the series. It's been a really enjoyable, recording these. So thank you again for your time.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.